My name is Glenn Zarmanov, and I'm part of a group called We Are Change New Jersey here. I originally started a smaller city based group called Jersey City Citizens for 9/11 Truth back in 2006 when I first got involved with all this. And then now, a couple of years after that, I branched out and started We Are Change New Jersey, which is a statewide organization. And basically, I knew that 9/11 was an inside job before 9/11 even happened. I instinctively knew by looking at the Twin Towers when I was 8 years old that something just didn't sit right with those buildings, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But essentially, they were too perfect. The buildings just didn't look right. They looked like they were sticking out above the rest of the skyline in an unnatural way, almost like two dynamite sticks waiting to go off, built into the skyline. And that's literally what happened. The buildings were built to be destroyed as part of this giant ritual. And of course, I didn't know all that at the time, but I just knew instinctively that this was an inside job. As soon as I heard the phrase, a plane has hit the World Trade Center, I don't know if it was a coincidence that I just so happened to be in French class at the time. It was my first or second day of high school in freshman year. But basically, as soon as I heard the phrase that a plane hit the World Trade Center, I immediately, instinctively felt that this is a military coup. This is a setup by the government. This is clearly a staged event. And then I saw the second plane hit in person, and I saw both towers actually blow up in person, and they did blow up. They didn't collapse because I saw the explosion, I heard the explosion. And so basically a year went by, 2 years went by. I wasn't hearing in the media what I experienced. It didn't match up with what I remember seeing and hearing of the attacks. So that got me scratching my head for a little bit, thinking, wait a minute, if I saw the buildings blow up, how come they're not talking about that? How come they're talking about some hijackers flying planes when, I mean, I don't even know that it was a commercial plane, to be honest with you, because I remember a dark object banking very sharply, flying very quickly like a fighter jet, and that's what a lot of witnesses actually reported saying, is that the second plane sounded like a fighter jet patrolling the city. That's how fast it was flying. And now we know for a fact that the jets that they claimed hit the towers on 9/11 actually exceeded their flight capacity. That is, they were going faster miles per hour than they were actually designed to. So it's totally far-fetched what they're telling us. I don't know exactly what happened to those original planes or what happened to all those passengers that they said were supposedly on board the planes, but I do know that what I saw myself was a dark gray or black plane, some kind of winged object, and that's what all these new witnesses are talking about in these new videos. They talk about it looked like a military plane, it looked like a silver plane, it looked like a black plane or a gray plane. The descriptions vary, but basically all these people concur with my own memory of the event, so all these tapes were covered up for a reason, because they go against their official explanation of commercial planes, and because it confirms what I and other witnesses saw here in person. So basically, I've come full circle now from witnessing the event to also predicting the event to now leading the way as a leader of men here in not only New Jersey, but across the world, with the We Are Change movements going global and all types of other 9/11 truth questioning movements going global. I'm just trying to do the right thing and correct the historical record, not only to dredge up and jostle my memory, bring up the memory of what I experienced and what I remember actually happened. That's why I'm editing all these new videos, so I can remember what I actually saw, so it matches up with my own memory. So for my own recollection, I can accurately remind myself of what happened, but also so that the general public who maybe doesn't live around here in New Jersey, New York, actually gets the real scoop, because I saw it in person. Most people, including truthers in the movement, saw it only on television, so they really have no credibility when it comes to talking about the events. And, I have several friends here who witnessed the attacks, and they can talk about the same exact thing, how the second plane, it looked like a military aircraft, how the towers were clearly exploding, how the explosions could be heard and felt for miles. And now we have all those witnesses on TV confirming that. The vibrations were felt as far as Maine. I mean, believe it or not, that's in mainstream 9/11 documentaries, that the seismographs picked up the vibration of the collapses of the towers as far away as the state of Maine. So for miles, people could see, feel, and hear those buildings exploding, but the media just changed the story and said, oh no, there wasn't any bombs. It was just the airplanes, when really what I remember is that on the day of 9/11, the news media actually admitted that there were bombs in the buildings and that they blew up Building 7 for safety reasons. And then they just changed their story and said, you know what? We didn't blow up anything. You're just imagining all that. So here we are 11 years later. We have all the original data now combined with our personal experience and all of the absurdity that's gone on, it's clear to see that 9/11 wasn't what they told us it was, and it's actually beyond an inside job. It's a giant societal ritual that was established to overthrow the established order, that is the natural order of logic and reason, and it was literally imbued with this intention to destroy logic and reason. That's why people have a difficult time speaking out about 9/11, because they're literally under mind control, under hypnosis. Whether it's the numerological or symbolic aspect of it, they just somehow can't get past this certain etheric barrier to investigating the attacks, and that's because we were literally traumatized, as was I, before the event even took place, through the media, in various cartoons and movies and even print and radio ads. 9/11 was depicted before it happened as a way to psychologically condition us to stand down. So maybe some people were weak-minded, but not me. I mean, I immediately felt a strong sense of deja vu when the attacks happened, and that gut instinct is what led me to where I am now.
And where are we now? What's going on this year?
Well, basically this year we're trying to reinvigorate the movement and reignite the flames of liberty, because last year, the 10th anniversary, the whole refrain from the media and the government was, well, 10 years has been long enough, we magically got Osama bin Laden just in time for the 10th anniversary. So, it's time to move on, basically, to wrap things up. I mean, Time Magazine had a special out called Beyond 9/11. That was their cover story. So their whole message was, where are we at now? We're nowhere. 9/11 is over. The decade of 9/11 is past, and it's now time to move on. So you see Time Magazine now publishing collector's editions about secret societies and stuff, because the secret's out. The New World Order is real. People have looked into it, and that's why the mainstream media is rushing to catch up with us, because they can no longer fight us. They're now trying to join us on the whole conspiracy theory angle, and that's why they're putting out these collector's editions every month. Secret Societies edition, New World Order edition, 9/11 edition. I mean, a new one just came out the other day called Time Magazine Civilizations in Decline, or something like that, or the collapse and rise of different empires. And you turn to the last page, and what does it show? It shows the World Trade Center exploding, and then the new supposed Freedom Tower being built right next to it on the opposite page. So they're admitting it to you in the mainstream now in these magazines that America's pretty much over and done with, and it's all because of 9/11. So that's where we're at today, is basically trying to get people to look at this from a fresh perspective 10 and now 11 years down the line. And so they can look at it from a fresh perspective because enough time has passed, and also we have a bunch of new evidence to put into a new light what actually did happen on 9/11. So basically, we're trying to get the word out that the 9/11 truth movement is stronger than ever before, not just alive and well, but actually bigger and better than it has been.
And do you see justice coming for 9/11?
That's perhaps the most important question of all. Do we have any chance of 9/11 justice? Because there's a lot of issues that are related to 9/11, like 9/11 health, the whole issue of the air quality being disastrous in the White House and EPA changing their initial assessments, saying that the air was not safe to breathe, to then saying it was safe to breathe so they could open up Wall Street very quickly. There's a bunch of issues, 9/11 truth itself, which we now have. We've now acquired the 9/11 truth, all the terabytes, all the data of censored videos and other documents that was kept secret. But now, like you said, we're on to the third and final phase of our quest, which is 9/11 justice, which is a bit more abstract and difficult to define, because for some people, 9/11 justice would be, just seeing Osama bin Laden killed, and so people felt that, there was already some closure last year, when really there's no evidence to suggest that bin Laden was killed, and there's never even been any real evidence to suggest that he was even behind the attacks in the first place, let alone surviving magically for 10 years, evading the government and military, and also, by the way, having these timely updates in his video reports. Bin Laden was always up to date with world events, it seems. Even though no one could trace his communications, he somehow was magically always informed and up to date. So where are we now? We're basically, we're in the twilight zone. We're caught somewhere in between floors on an elevator. I don't know how quite to describe it, but we're in the middle. We're in flux right now. We're in between the 9/11 truth movement fading away into obscurity and it coming back. So we're not really sure where we are because we're in the process of rediscovering 9/11. So, like I said, it's kind of funny that the truth is coming out between the 9th and the 11th anniversaries. So we're kind of in a phase right now where we're not really sure where we're at because we're not only still distancing ourselves from the events and trying to, look at it objectively and rationally without emotionally getting caught up, but also we're still reflecting and reminiscing and remembering what happened. So to me, 9/11 justice simply means getting the story straight, getting the historical record straight, and then we can worry about actually capturing the perpetrators and actually prosecuting them. And to me, I would feel happy even if some of the accomplices of 9/11 got put away and tried. But I think the best way to do this is to put these people through a trial by a jury of their peers in a court of law where we can actually have due process and enter into the official record all of this evidence that we've been discussing. So what I want to see happen is instead of talking about this stuff for years and years on message boards and having DVD screenings and whatever for our entertainment, let's actually compile this data into a format that could be easily interpreted as criminal evidence that could be entered into a court of law to prosecute those responsible. So to me, that would mean at least subpoenaing people like Bush and Rice and whoever were, in charge at the time to at least punish them for dereliction of duty. And then if we have any justice beyond that, that would include, actually rounding up people like the Rockefellers and other Federal Reserve shareholders who were actually the real planners of the attack. So there's a difference between asking who planned 9/11 and who executed it. And some of the people who executed it may no longer even be with us. That is to say, the people that wired the buildings up, for instance, they may have been disposed of already. We don't know that. But I would be happy personally to at least see the story set straight so that people know that this was a fake event in American history and that we know it was a fake event. So that's my take on 9/11 justice. About the science, basically, we're at the point where it's beyond a shadow of a doubt what actually happened on 9/11. We know for a fact that buildings 1, 2, and 7 World Trade Center were wired up with explosives. The only question is what type of explosives and who did it and how exactly did they get it in there. But the idea that they were wired up is not preposterous because if you're the owner of the buildings, if you're Larry Silverstein and the government and you want to blow up your own buildings, it's pretty easy to conceive how you might be in control of security to get away with such a thing. So obviously it's not far-fetched to suggest that sometime in the week before or maybe the month before the buildings were wired up to be demolished. So that much we know. We just don't know exactly what type of explosives were involved. You have the architects and engineers speculating that it was nanothermite or some thermitic compound. Thermite is just a catch-all phrase for explosive stuff. Basically, it could be any type of granulated powdered. They think it was aluminum explosive powder mixed with some other stuff with sulfur. But it could be something other than thermite. It could be thermite combined with something else, or it could be something entirely different, maybe some type of exotic weaponry that we haven't seen before. I'm not against all those theories. I'm simply in favor of a plausible explanation that fits the evidence that we have, and I think conventional explosives would do the trick, such as C4 or RDX, but you have other people suggesting that it could have been radio-controlled explosives or, directed energy of some kind. I don't know. There might be some truth to all that. I'm not an architect and engineer, but you don't need to be an architect or an engineer to hypothesize that something besides the planes compromised those buildings because, like I said, it's clear not only am I a witness, but it was reported on the news on 9/11 that, in fact, there were bombs in the Twin Towers and Building 7. So it's just admitted fact, but we don't know exactly the specifics of it.
Can you speak more about the cognitive dissonance or how we can overcome this collectively in psychologically?
Sure. I think the most important part of the new Architects and Engineers DVD, if there's any important part, because I think the presentation's a bit too long for my taste, to be honest with you. There's nothing really in there except, these individuals putting their academic credentials out there, so that it gives the viewers some credibility when they're watching it. For maybe for some newcomers, it's useful, but for someone like myself, it's not really beneficial. We don't even need architects and engineers for 9/11 truth at this point because we have all the scientific data. So the best part of their presentation, I thought, was that 15-minute segment at the end of their film, Experts Speak Out, where they have the psychologists talk about the cognitive dissonance and how we have some trouble fessing up to what actually happened because of our own imperfections and our own ego and stuff like that. So I think that's the most important thing that needs to be discussed in the years to come. And that's what I've tried to do with my first, second, and now third film. The 9/11 Gate film is really a series of films, but my first two documentaries that I put out on the subject of 9/11 really dealt with that specifically, how this was a story that was implanted in our minds before it even happened. And over the past 2 or 3 years, I've gotten even more evidence of that. So I put together a second film specifically talking about how this legend has been spun so many times it's now turned into a myth. And that's what 9/11 is. It's a sacred myth that was invented to be passed down for generations so that we would never, ever question and that we would just pass on the story. But unfortunately, as we all know, like a game of telephone, nothing ever ends up the way you initially intended to. After you passed around a simple statement around the room of a few people, it always comes back distorted. So similarly with 9/11, that's what we have, is we have a story that was told to us, and now all of us have told the story over and over so many times that we're not even sure what the original story was. Like I was saying tonight at the presentation during the movie screening, what is the official story? I'm not sure that in 2012 we even have an official story. There's multiple official stories because they kept changing, they kept changing their explanations. That is NIST, as well as ASCII, the American Society of Civil Engineers, which led the first investigation before the FEMA and NIST reports came out. They're basically saying that we don't have an answer. I mean, that's their answer to this day is, we think that this might have happened, but we don't really have an answer. So it's important now more than ever to really go beyond the psychological implications and just get down to the actual evidence of what happened, because it doesn't really matter what I think or what you think or anyone thinks at the end of the day, because 9/11 is really not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of politics. It's a matter of science. And so if we can just get past our own biases, we can get closer to the objective reality of 9/11.
Kevin Ryan talks about a lot of the behind the scenes, like put options on the airlines and the people who were in the impact zones, the companies that were in the impact zones, who might have created or who developed the nanothermite. So, do you talk much about that evidence that would incriminate people?
Well, yeah, I think one of the strongest points that we should stick with as a movement is this whole idea of foreknowledge, whether it's predictive programming, that is the media planting seeds ahead of time, showing the towers exploding, or subliminal 911s in the background or whatever. That's one aspect of it, but the other aspect that no one can disprove, whether they're a truther, debunker, on the fence, or whatever, is this concept of foreknowledge in the economic sphere as well as the military and political sphere. There were several people who made a lot of money off of 9/11 and continue to do so. And that all came out. I mean, that's Dan Rather. That's Dylan Radigan. That's not a theory. There's absolutely nothing theoretical about the insider trading aspect of 9/11. That's an open and shut case. That's confirmed beyond anything that we know. So the one thing I would stick with, if anything, is stuff like that, talking about how there was suspicious trading right before the towers collapsed. We now know the German company Convar has actually analyzed those DVDs of data disks and hard drives that they found in the rubble of the World Trade Center. Turns out there was millions of dollars worth of transactions going on right before the buildings actually collapsed, as well as the days before and weeks prior. There was all types of situations going on with the airlines and the put options. I don't know where all of that leads. Some of it might be dead end, some of it might be red herrings, but the point is we know for sure that there was these telegraphed motions in the media and among these private investors and stuff like that. I mean, Max Kaiser talks about this all the time, actually, how the market, sends a price signal, and how on 9/11 there was indicators, suspicious market trading before the towers had even collapsed, indicating that the towers were going to collapse, or that something was going to get worse on 9/11. So that's an aspect that I think that's really overlooked, but I think it holds really the key meat and potatoes to the whole 9/11 plot is that no one can deny that the media and government and certain investors, foreign traders and stuff like that, knew about 9/11 and they did nothing to stop it, or in fact they aided it and then covered it up after the fact. So, what other conclusion does that leave us with except that they planned and orchestrated the whole thing? If they were involved in knowing about it and then covering it up, what's the logical conclusion that in between those two things they had something to do with carrying out the attacks? That is the government, media, and these Wall Street people. So really, it wasn't just an attack on our culture, on our psyche. It was an attack on our economy. I mean, that was our World Trade Center. It was an attack on our dollar. It was an attack on trade, and so that's another big aspect of it that I think people don't need to overlook, but I think people need to delve deeper into that because it's literally in the money. And people say, follow the money if you want to solve the crime. So literally follow the money.
I have another question about Congress. Why are they quiet?
Well, Congress was definitely in on 9/11. I mean, that was a big part of the operation, was this whole fake bipartisanship, how, we're all Americans now, we're standing shoulder to shoulder, and there isn't a crack of, light between us that won't, that'll escape through the cracks between our shoulders or whatever. And, yeah, Congress definitely knew all about it, and it helped them pass a whole bunch of different budgets that they were having difficulty pass otherwise, especially for the state of New York. They acquired all these millions thanks to Pataki, Giuliani, and Senator Clinton, Hillary at the time. They, required all these extravagant funds for rebuilding or for the rescue or for whatever it is, and the federal government just gave them carte blanche. So that's very important to look at as well.